Hello, everybody. We today are talking about senior chess. I just got back from the U.S. Senior Closed, a beautiful event, 1 round a day, rest day thrown in. Kostya Kavutskiy was doing the commentary, and I managed to finish 6 out of 9 with a GM norm. I've already GM, but still I collect the things, So I won the last 4. It was a nice bit of encouragement, a little bit of positive reinforcement for all the studying I've done recently. Positive reinforcement for the program as well. And so today I thought we could break it up into 2 sections. One, where we talk about just the advent of senior chess, talk about what it is, if people are into it as fans, what it would, and then later to talk about what it would take to succeed at senior chess, if there's something different on a competitive level. And that's a follow-up from a podcast we did 1 year ago, from when I won the U.S. Senior, the Irwin Invitational. That's the state champion of every state goes to play. And me and Kostya were there 1 year ago, and we did a pod with David. How could I win it? To think about the prep so we can kind of reflect 1 year out on what I did right, what I did wrong. So just to introduce this, it might seem natural to people that senior chess exists, but to me, it's really interesting to think back. When I was a kid, there was not even a hint of senior chess existing, nor at that time was it so evidently clear that youth had an advantage. For example, Botvinnik was world champion into his 50s. And it was even kind of thought in some circles that you could play chess at a high level into your 50s. And that is just when you look at the rating graphs of just about everyone who is playing over 50, it's just not true. Everybody at this tournament, I had legends were at this tournament. Shabalov, Kaidanov, Christensen, Akopian, all these guys, their rating graph is the same. It's on the same curve going downwards. And so, one of the things about senior chess, and there's a lot to talk about, but it's just like a recognition that, people are necessarily going to lose a step. And I just feel it's a very new thing. And just recently, we had St. Louis Chess Club put together this senior championship. I believe 2019 was the first one. And then for about, 6 or 7 years now, there's been a world team, both for the 50 plus and the 65 plus. And now also there's a 50 plus women's team, 65 plus women's team too. So it's something that's very recent. Mm-hmm. And I think when we talk about it, we kind of also have to talk about like women's chess. A lot of people find that controversial. Maybe some people find senior chess controversial. Definitely something we should talk about. Anyway, so that's my opener, and I'll throw it to you guys.
Yeah, I've got a couple things to add on right away. So another example of how older people used to play chess, seemingly at the highest level, was Smyslov, right? Competing in the candidates for the World Championship at age 64, I believe, which is, he was like one of the top 8 players in the world, is sort of what that suggests. And then another thing is, I think a lot of people, you'll sometimes see these things where people say the beauty of chess, that, young and old, male, female, from any country, from any culture, from anything, handicapped, with or without sight, with or without hearing, with or without hands, everybody can all play chess together, right? And you see these pictures from tournaments where, a 6-year-old plays a 96-year-old or something like that, right? And so there is this part of chess that people say is wonderful, where it's like everyone can play together and it's kind of an even playing field, is sort of part of the implication or sense of that, right?
Right.
And so then when we've got kids tournaments and women's tournaments and senior tournaments, then people who don't really know chess will ask, like, well, why is there that thing, and what does there need to be that for? So we talk about that today. And one other little tidbit, now Slipped my mind. Ooh, getting senior. Getting close. Oh, yes. You said that the history of it is so recent.
Yeah.
I recall maybe 20 years ago there being a World Senior Individual Championships. So that's been around a little bit longer, and I think it was 65 plus at the time. So for for a lot of things, senior can often be defined as 65 for different like retirement things or benefits, or if you're going to a museum and trying to get a discounted entry or whatever it might be.
Right.
And so chess, I think, has recently is very, very recent to redefine it down from 65 to 50, right?
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
If I'm not getting that information wrong. I think with reason, but I'll pass it to Kostya.
Well, first off, let me just say congrats to Jesse on second place U.S. Senior Championship. I feel like you guys are really underplaying. Like Jesse was working like all year for this.
Yeah.
You know, and I certainly didn't know how he was gonna perform in the tournament. Like, I don't know. I didn't have like huge expectations, but he ended up doing great.
Yeah.
And actually, it was very touching to see how many folks out there were super pumped to see it. I mean, me and David we were covering the games. I was working the event, so I was getting to watch it up close. And people really enjoyed seeing, I guess, the journey, like Jesse training for the event and then Jesse actually competing, being there. It was funny. It was kind of like online, crossing into the physical.
Yeah. The feeling was amazing on stream. I mean, people were so pumped to watch this. So pumped.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was cool. I feel like we should definitely talk about why Jesse did so well in the field.
And how do you feel about senior chess, boss, now that you experience it up close?
Yeah, well, I find it quite interesting. I mean, I definitely think it has a right to exist. Like, I think it's very natural. In fact, people are making this point, you know, that it's like, it's not hard we're always amazed when like a kid breaks a milestone. Or like reaches some new record. But it's not difficult for kids to play chess. They got nothing else to do. They got no responsibilities. What's difficult is for like grown adults to play chess and to maintain their level. I think we've all felt that like over the years. So yeah, for sure, senior chess is something that should exist. I don't know. I mean, I think it's great. Like you also get to see a bunch of players start playing again, like you have Mickey Adams and John Nunn. I know John Nunn has been playing the senior events, I think, for some time now, but I think that's always been amazing to see like a legend kind of like rejoin the sphere.
Right.
Yeah, so no, I don't know. I have many thoughts in terms of how it compares to other tournaments, but in terms of a circuit, I mean, I don't know, it makes plenty of sense. Like age is a very clear handicap that comes with time.
One question, and you guys would be able to better answer this because you were doing the streaming, is just like how popular it could be for fans. And I think part of the inspiration, actually, I'm certain that part of the inspiration for St. Louis going big on it was simply because Rex Singfield, the guy who founded the club, looked up to all of those guys who were playing, right? Because they were the heroes back in the day. Joel Benjamin, Larry Christensen, guys who are in the Hall of Fame. And even Yasser Seirawan, though the guy doesn't play, we should talk a little bit about who's playing and why not. But I think for some people, some fans, that's a big deal to see their like childhood heroes play it out. Whereas with a lot of maybe the younger kids, they're like, who are these kids? Instead of people that can kind of have name recognition for them and they have memories going back decades of these people playing. As a fan, for example, as a chess fan, I'm very fickle. Like I'm not interested in all the top tournaments. I'm really interested in like the candidates and the World Championship. And the other things are fun and interesting, but that's it, you know? So I want to know from your guess, like, does this have a chance at being something interesting, or what do you think?
So I think it largely hinges on something that you've always told us, Jesse, which is that you want to have some kind of, you want to care about what somebody's doing in the event. Right. And I think that sort of trumps young, old, men, women, who knows what, right? Is for there to be some kind of story. Like for us, this was one of the most exciting tournaments we've watched on stream because we've watched your training and we have that context for it, And I think you could do the same thing with almost any kind of subgroup of chess players, right? If there's great stories and good stuff at stake and, whole method of training that's on the line in a way, right? Or if you've got different methods of training on the line against each other, the way you have different schools of thought and then, representatives of different dojos would clash in martial arts, right? I think that kind of stuff brings a lot of excitement. So for me, this was super exciting to watch, but through the lens of your games in particular, right? That I was more invested in. And then, like for any tournament, if I didn't know or care about specific players in the tournament, it might have been less exciting, right? Because I think there is an advantage to tournaments like the candidates, not just in that it's got something at stake, but in that it's the best players in the world. And that's something that any subcategory of tournament doesn't have, right? So there's some element of any student of the game that you might want to know what the very best people are doing. What opening are the players over 2,800 playing this week? Should I learn it?
Right.
Are they playing for end games? Or are they playing for complications and et cetera, right? So there's a certain thing that no subgroup's ever going to have to compete with, the top 10 or 20 players in their events. So it's really a question of the stories.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, it was the most interesting tournament since candidates, basically. It's just, I think we talked about this before, but yeah, when you have like a personal stake in how someone is doing, it just makes the whole thing so much more interesting. I don't think I'd be able to, just follow like one single classical game for like several hours, just like some random game, that if I didn't like really feel invested about one of the players. And I think that's what it is. I mean, I think when people have like a personality that they follow that they really like, I think they love seeing them play and then going up against other players that they like, that they've known and seen for years. So that's why it's very, I don't know. So I think it was very interesting for folks to watch. And again, I think it's the crossover because it's like people mostly know Jesse from like the YouTube videos and the podcast, so this like complete digital environment. Now seeing him, it basically was a crossover episode. Now seeing him in St. Louis, in the same place where like U.S. Championship is held and Grand Chess Tour and all that stuff. Like, that I think was it was a merging of two worlds, which was kind of fun.
I can give something else about whether or not it should exist, even though we're all in agreement on it. I prepared a very quick comparison. I looked up swimming and tennis.
Right.
Because I had heard of masters swimming.
Yeah.
And then I just picked another sport where I thought maybe other sports have it too after I confirmed it was swimming, right?
Right.
So I looked up in swimming and there's something called masters, which is to provide age categories as you get older for playing, the way they would use weight classes in boxing or something like that, right? And so that if, let's say, peak performance for a swimmer is between 18 and 25 or something, I don't know exactly, but if it's something like that, then people older could compete and actually try to win first in a race with people their age. So I looked it up and they have it, and then I looked it up for tennis and they have it too. And for swimming, the way it's organized is it starts at 25. Shockingly young, right?
Yeah.
There's an over 25 category. I thought it would be over 35, Jesse, mistakenly. I just sort of guessing, like, from seeing people show up at the swimming pool for like masters training or whatever.
Right.
So under 25, it's just like it's open?
Under 25 would be like you're just the best in the world or whatever.
And you can be like over 25 and compete in that.
You could, yes.
Gotcha.
If you were that good, but I take it not many people are if they have an over 25 category, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
You know? 25 is so young, right? It's so far from what you would think of as senior. And of course, they call it masters, and only eventually is it seniors. But it's the same kind of idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it goes every 5 years. So it's very granular because they probably have more swimmers than chess players or something, or more old swimmers than old chess players or something, right? Obviously, chess right now wouldn't go 25 plus because, I mean, a lot of the top 10 players are over 25 or over 30 even.
No, I wanted to say we've gone lower. We have the 21 plus, the at least 21 tournament.
That was another context I was going to bring up, those Alto tournaments, right?
That's our newest senior.
Yeah. And we could go that young in chess, potentially, right? But we do have the best players in the world are,
mostly
Magda,
above
Picaro, Caruana, 30s. So.
Right.
But yeah, so they've got every 5 years from 25 up. And then I looked, and it goes up to like 105 to 109. It's like the top category or something like that. This master swimmer was 105 years old, although they noted that he did die in the year that he competed. But then I looked for tennis, and tennis also does every 5 years, and they used to have from 35 to 85, and they've just added 30 plus and 90 plus this last year, just adding one more step. So now as a tennis player, you could be over 30, and you could already be competing in this kind of, not quite seniors, right? But age restricted, recognizing the handicap section.
Right.
So,
and I think one of the things that just brings out is the question, are these dates, 50 and 65, are they meaningful? I think one thing I've been following for years, for example, is just how many players over 40 are in the 2,700 plus club. And in general, there's only about 2 or 3. They bop in and out of there. A lot of those guys like Anand barely play, but they play like 1 game a year, and they stay in that list. So already 40 also seems like a very meaningful number for me then. And something I want to stress that came out in this experience for me too is age is, of course, the predominant reason why we're getting worse, but it's also definitely true that the younger generation is just better. And I think you can say that about any sport, that the younger generation will get better with improved training methods, more people playing, so the pool of talent is much bigger. And so it's not just the age thing. And I think one thing me and Kostya were talking with Acopian about that I only became aware of about 5 years ago was this difference between those of us who grew up playing in like the 80s and 90s, where we're playing with plans, versus the kids today who are playing move by move, and also just different approach to chess entirely, almost like a non-verbal approach, right? You're playing with plans, you need some words. You need some words to describe what's going on. And the kids are not playing that way. And it's just a different kind of chess that they're playing. Perhaps you could say, and I think you should say that it's competitively superior to the chess that we were playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kids are getting faster, for sure. But one thing I really thought about this event is that Acopian played the best chess out of anyone, including the U.S. juniors. Like his games were very clean. He was, I think, worse in maybe half a game against Kaidanov, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I could tell, he made very few mistakes, that were exploitable. Whereas in the U.S. juniors, like Christopher Yuan, okay, he had a brilliant tournament, but his games were like crazy and messy, and there was like lots of back and forth, and tactically, he ended up winning. But I thought Acopian, to me, he clearly played the best chess out of anyone.
Actually, I'll just say, so after the tournament, we were hanging out with, Kostya had already gone home because he's a tired pup, but we were hanging out there with Larry C., Joel, Yasser, Julio Becerra, and we challenged those pups to some blitz, dude. And we had been drinking. They're not even allowed to drink. Oh, we spanked them. We spanked them hard. There's no Kopi in there. No, we're killing them. And they don't even know how to talk trash, these little fools, you know? Oh, we're just hurting them. Yeah. So anyways,
I was wondering how you guys did. Yeah, I went home before, the action got too heated.
Okay.
That's surprising. You guys should have been tired. It was late and you were beating up kids?
Oh yeah, dude. Killing. Yeah. Just destroying. I think another thing I just want to mention before we get into the other competitive aspect to it is some senior players stop playing entirely. Some are playing I would say most of the people at this event are mostly just doing senior events. We can talk a little bit more about why that's the case. And then very few are really still kind of going for it, still pushing as if they were young kids. And I think you just use somebody as an example. Yasser Seirawan hasn't played since he kind of retired. I want to say the 2003 U.S. Championship. I don't think he's really played. Maybe he's just played blitz and stuff since then.
No, he played a couple events, right? He played an Olympiad at one point.
I think we were talking about it, around 2003 was about the last time that he was playing serious.
Consistently. Yeah, for sure.
So for guys like that, also my coach KGB, for them it's it hurts them so bad to play moves that aren't up to the standard that they see themselves in, as looking in a mirror. And I think one of the fundamental things about senior chess then that helped me realize is if you're going to do this, you have to come to terms with the fact that no, you're not going to be playing, you probably will not be playing the best chess of your life. So it's a recognition. The first step you have to do for senior chess is be right, boss, I am not going to be playing the chess I once played. And so right there is a barrier where you get a filter of guys whose ego will not let them even do it. They might still enjoy studying chess, most of them do, right? Mm-hmm. They still enjoy being around chess. Yasser loves being around chess, but that feeling of maybe losing, right? Of once being the top dog and maybe now not being the top dog, of losing in front of other people, in front of the fans. It's too much for them. So right away, that's the first filter that happens in senior chess.
I agree 100%. It's a very tough process. I already had to go through it, so.
Well, I think big question for Jesse. Yeah. Why do you think you did so well?
Okay. Well, the first thing, there's basically two big things that happened that I did well. And I think, we talked a year ago, what would I have to do to win it? And a year ago would have been easier because Akopian did not have, Akopian won this tournament this year and has played twice before, and twice before did fairly poorly just in terms of his standards. Now, let me just paint a picture. This guy used to be top 10, genius at every way of thinking about it. When you sit across the board from him, it's like sitting across from Einstein, bro. He's got this hair that goes out to here. It's pearly white, and you're just oh, dude, this is intimidating, man. This is really intimidating. And then you talk to him after the game, and you're oh my God, this guy's a genius.
I interviewed her a couple of times, and it's just every word out of his mouth is just pure elo. Just pure total wisdom, understanding. Yeah.
But even so, one of the things that's interesting is I definitely could have, especially I had some rough breaks early on in round 1 and 4, where I definitely should have lost round 1. I definitely should have drew round 4. So, that right there puts me equal with him. Now, I definitely had some breaks go my way as well, but I'm just trying to say, like, even that was still achievable. And part of the whole thing to say about that is when I look at that field, I am less talented than every single one of those guys, with the exception of Root. But Root's an interesting character in himself. That's a whole interesting story about Root, but I'm not going to go into it. But in any case, when you think about Kaidanov, Shabalov, Christensen, Benjamin, I'm definitely not as talented as those guys. It's just not the case. So and I'm not saying that to just be humble or whatever. No, these guys performed at a very high level for a very long time. Their chess understanding and experience far surpasses mine. So the reason then that I could compete has to do with two things. One, I followed the ChessDojo training program, and that might sound like I'm just advertising for the program, but what the program did was like, okay, these are the things I have to do, and I knew that I had to do them, and also key to that was that I enjoyed doing them. I enjoy studying chess, and it's a real pleasure to get up early in the morning and to work on it. Fantastic. I also, with that, part of the program is I was playing, and not all of these guys are playing that actively. Then the one that's most visibly obvious is that I was in much better shape physically than these guys. And I think basically all of them have neglected their bodies. You see it at a first glance. And one thing, when you just look at the tail of the tape where I won the last 4 rounds, part of that has to be just that they were out of gas, right? There's no other way. I mean, winning 4 in a row, that's a pretty rare thing indeed for any kind of thing, right? And so part of that story has to be like, oh, these guys couldn't hang with it anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And I think physical health is important no matter where you are in chess, but the older you get, the more telling that it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I think that was definitely a big factor. I'll add that Shaba at the end of the tournament, like he didn't do well. He pointed out that the 3 people that played in the U.S. Senior Olympiad, him, Melik, and Novikov, they all did poorly this event.
Right.
And he thought that was due to just being tired from like having played an event just before.
Right.
But that's part of it. I mean, having like energy to play a lot of chess. And anyways, you only played Shaba like at the end there. The other 2 guys, you played them early on.
True. Uh-huh.
Yeah, actually, so I was thinking like in your first 4 rounds, it was kind of promising because like you said, like you lost the first round, which like definitely shouldn't have. And then you were very, very close to beating Novikov. So it was like an extra full point you kind of deserved or so.
Right.
Or was within range, within a coin flip or 2.
For sure. And so, okay, and then round 5, like, okay, you face a Kopian, that's a tough game, but then like, okay, the rest of the round, no more Kopian, or the rest of the tournament, smooth sailing. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the energy thing definitely seems like it was part of it. I also felt like it was. I also felt like it was your first time playing, and like you were just very motivated to be there. Not to say any of the other players weren't, but I think it was just you and Julio's first time. Julio also he seemed like very energized to be there. And he ended up doing, not that badly. So, I don't know. For me, that also kind of felt like the motivation was definitely there.
Yeah. I mean, when I was commenting the tournament, I remember like saying, I think that as long as Jesse doesn't get upset about 1 or 2 of these things that went against him, he'll continue to do better as the tournament gets later, and the difference in his fitness and the other players' fitness becomes more and more of a factor. Like there's getting tired in a single game over the course of 5 or 6 hours and slipping up late in a game, which can be a factor, but there's also the totality of the games piling up, right? And from a distance, it looked like that was a major factor. in how the tournament played out.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I want to mention that was kind of just a factor that's going on is I think a lot of these old timers, the way they approach round robins and just energy is they're like, okay, if I face a guy like a Kopian, I want to keep it super dry. Maybe I'll play a Petrov or something. I just want to draw. But I'm playing this guy and my rating had slipped before the tournament big time, you know, so they're like, oh, this is the guy I have to beat. And so every morning what I would do is I would look at the games of whoever opponent I was playing. I was looking at their games up till that point, you know. And I was looking at those games and they were like dry affairs, man. They were like really dry affairs. Whereas all of my games, dude, oh man, it was blows. You know, there was no easy draws or nothing, you know, and it was nothing that was just some short and sweet thing. It was blows, blows, blows to the end. And so that, I think, ultimately was to my advantage. In a certain sense, at least it increased the volatility factor of the games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. It didn't seem like anyone was trying to draw you all the way, until the very end with Julio, like basically having to play for a win with the tournaments situation.
Well, and that one actually, one thing actually is interesting I want to say about the event that is especially interesting in hindsight is I generally don't study openings. And, you know, every week on the graduation show, dude, I get like under 1,000 people and I can see that they're studying big time openings. And I'm like, please listen to me. Please listen to me. And I have this rant that I give every single time, how it's hurting their chess more than helping and yada, yada. But in any case, so at a much higher level, I did not study hardly any openings going into the event. A key feature of senior chess is that it's very hard, it's much more difficult for us to memorize lines anyway. So me memorizing a bunch of lines before the event isn't gonna help too much anyway. So if I'm gonna do any opening study, it's just gonna be in like the week or two before the event and then right before the game. And so the thing I'm leading to here is that for the most part, well, definitely, I won most of the opening battles. So what I mean by that is who gets to a position that they know better than the other person. That's all it means to win the opening battle. Doesn't mean you have a winning position. Position might be totally equal or something. You might even be a little worse. But if you know the position beforehand, right, you're going to be ahead on the clock. You're going to have more confidence, and you will have a feel for the position in a way that your opponent won't. So despite my doing very little opening work, besides just before the round, I was winning those opening battles. Really, and it was the game against the Kopian where I lost the opening battle, and that was a big determining factor in me losing that game. But I won. Yeah. I won basically every other opening battle. Yeah, surprising, you know. Yeah. And do they have much more experience in a variety of openings and yada, yada? Yes. And then also I should just mention with the game with Julio, I've played Julio a bunch and I've never beaten him. He's a great player, knows his openings really well. But I knew that he was going to try for a win. And I was like, you know what, buddy? Let's just spend a couple hours looking at the King's Indian because I'm sure that's what's going to happen. That's exactly what happened. And did the opening win me the game or anything? No. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's a huge competitive advantage to have seen a lot of those positions right before the game.
Mm. So why do you think that you won so many opening battles?
Well, one thing about senior chess is many of the opponents are extremely predictable. Mm-hmm. Novikov, as an example, has been playing the exact same openings since 1985. It is not varied at all, you know? And so you have other players who can vary it up, say like Shabalov, but they're not playing the most super sharp thing anyway, even if, you know, they have some ideas. Kaitanov as well. So yeah, with all those things, both those guys, for example, I was black against both those guys, and as black, you just want some position. That's all you want, right? And then against an old person, I want to make the game complex and long. That's all I want, So yeah, I won those opening battles.
You used to be a little bit more predictable, but here you played the aggressive repertoire as well as
Right.
D4. And it looked like your opponents were not aware of the aggressive repertoire.
Right.
Like it looked like they had not predicted the lines you played.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I doubt, many of Jesse's opponents are like chronically online and familiar with like the latest Chessable courses.
Right.
Might not have, would imagine just went off of Jesse's, games in the database, which are probably like a lot less 1E4.
Right.
But aggressive repertoire is perfect for a lot of those games. And by the way, also I had the disadvantage of I had 5 blacks and 4 whites, so I only had 4 whites in the tournament.
But I mean, if Jesse were facing someone even of my age or generation, right, somebody around age 40, they would think like, oh, this dude's published a Chessable course. Let me look at their Chessable course, right?
Maybe,
like,
yeah.
You really have to be of a different generation to not.
Yeah, for sure. I would at least consider it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when we were watching the games, it seemed like Jesse would get an advantage on the clock almost every game.
Yeah.
And usually because of like just knowing the opening deeper, or maybe, you had kind of sprung the first surprise and the opponent was not expecting the line that you guys ended up getting.
And I just want to add to that also because KGB will yell at me if I spend too long thinking on an intuitive move. So that's a key advantage that he drilled into me. It wasn't something you just learned. It's like something you got to get yelled at for several times. And then, it's not like you're not thinking. You're just going to save your thinking time for when you have to actually start calculating. So that's how I got ahead on the clock, in addition to the openings.
Yeah, no, the chat definitely noticed that, because there were some moves you made, like, no, I wouldn't say fast, but let's say you could have thought longer on them. And then chat was like, yeah, if you thought longer, KGB would yell at him. So they're like, they were very aware of your... Actually, which is, I think, one of the best things about having a coach is when you start hearing their voice in your head, like during the game.
Right.
You have some guidance. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I've got another question about, what does or doesn't work in senior chess, and specifically with something that worked out for you, Jesse, because I thought that there were a couple potential disappointments for you in the first half, right? And so my concern was like, I hope he's not upset or demoralized or any kind of, negative feelings around like a half point that got away. And do you feel like that's at all a factor in it? Like, how did you recover from disappointments? And do you think that other people in the tournament maybe weren't as good at doing that? Or was that an important piece of your success down the stretch?
Well, just to set the stage. So, last year, Malik won. And I think a big part of that was that he was fitter than the rest of the players, and he had been playing more actively. And so round 1, I'm playing my old friend Malik, and I lose a position I have zero business losing. Very painful loss. And the problem with the loss like that, and also when I didn't win in round, I think it was 4 against Novikov, is like, it's so painful. And your mind is going to just be spinning on that thing all night long, dude. All night long. And so one of the key things about this event that I really liked about it was that I think it's really important for seniors for everybody, but especially senior chess, dude, to have one round a day. So let me just dwell on this for a second. Let's say I don't sleep well. then I have the advantage of, okay, I can lay down again in the morning for an hour. And so every game I actually felt reasonably slept, you know, which is just like real problem. One of the, I think a key reason why my rating has collapsed in the last several years was I play these local 2 games a day tournaments, and that, you know, old people go to bed early, man. I go to bed at like 9, maybe 10. And so when you have a second game that starts at 6, you know, I'm just wrecked. Even whether I win it or draw it or whatever, I'm just wrecked. I'm not going to sleep well. And then you have to rinse and repeat for the next day. And when you're a kid, that's just much easier than when you're an old dude. You know, it's so much harder. And one of the things that's going on with these players, I've noticed, is they too are avoiding those nasty opens. And it's not just because they're worried about losing rating points. It's just, it's so hard for an older body to take that on, you know, without them breaking down. It's not good for your body either, especially if you're doing it often. So I definitely noticed just for myself that I was playing at a much higher level than when I'm playing these 2-round-a-day things, where I'm just, my mind feels like it's befuddled. I'm low on energy. I often get sick in those events, you know, from whatever, you know, variety of things hit me, and just the misery. And so one of my challenges now, for example, is finding events where I don't get blasted health-wise, you know, or don't just, also I just don't enjoy it. You don't want to, you know, I don't want to play chess if I don't enjoy it, you know. And so that's part of the problem with senior chess too, is like there's very few tournaments like this, and getting away. I mean, it was like a 14-day thing away, including the travel days, the rest day, and all this stuff. That was also very difficult. So I think that's one of the key challenges of senior chess, and you can't stop playing. I just want to stress that. You know, part of the Dojo training program says you got to play classical games to keep improving, or just stay where you are, and that's totally true. So that's a real challenge to any kind of senior person, anybody going, you know, trying to improve their game.
So you feel like you were able to recover basically just off of the time that you had in your schedule to recover.
That was a big part of it, yeah. But I'll stress, those 2 things really were painful. Especially first round, I lost to the guy, and Malik was like bursting out of the room, confident, like he had just beaten a chump or something. You know, he's like, well, I'm clearly going to win the event again this year. Yeah. I was like, oh man, are you kidding me, man? This is terrible.
Yeah. Hey, I thought he would too.
I mean, no, it was great that you recovered though. I mean, yeah, it did kind of start in the worst possible way. It's just like, but yeah, no, I totally agree. And like the 2 rounds per day, I think the enjoyment just goes out the window, because it just becomes like a survival thing. It just becomes about getting enough sleep before the game, getting time to eat, and then having energy during the game. Especially like the second round is brutal. So.
Jesse, without revealing too much, were you able to still do a little bit of work in the days in addition to the games that you played, like either going over your game from the day before or reviewing some opening that you thought might be played the next day?
Oh, I always reviewed the players' games I was facing, and then their openings in the morning. It was actually very enjoyable too. As contrast to a 2-round-a-day thing where you got like half an hour to scope some dude out, you know, I would look at their games, especially from the tournament that had already been played, and it was very enjoyable to sit there with my morning coffee and just look through games, you know, very enjoyable. So yeah,
you were able to do a couple hours and enjoy it, and it wasn't emptying your tank for the actual games.
No, I was fine with that. That was great. Nice. And I feel like with opening study too, that's the time in which I get more out of it and I enjoy it more, you know, like I'm about to play it or something. And it becomes a little interesting because I then have an opponent in mind too, you know.
No, so much better. I mean, that's why like opening sparring is such a big thing in the program, because it means so much more when like you know you're going to play an opponent in that position. Like you actually start thinking about how you're going to play it, and then it's less about just trying to like understand the opening with the computer or something. It's like, no, you have to have this position, so you really got to understand how to it's such a difference, I think.
One thing too about a little bit about opening preparation, and this is maybe less to do with senior chess, but when I am playing in an event where I am playing against a bunch of GMs, it's radically different from some open where I'm playing against some 2,100, 2,000 player who I've never heard of. When I'm playing the 2,000, 2,100 player, I feel this incredible need to win. And I end up often playing unprincipled chess. When I'm playing a GM, I'm just playing. I'm just trying to find the best moves. You know, whatever happens, happens. It's just a brawl, you know? But then all this pressure to win is, then there's like, if I win, I get 1 rating point. If I lose a gazillion. Draw the same thing, you know, totally different atmosphere. Yeah. And then one final thing I just want to mention that's very interesting, pleasurable about a senior event, I think, and this is, I think, very similar to what I hear from women's events, is women's events, one of the reasons I think it's prospered is women always say that it's much easier socially when they're at these events. And so I just want to stress that going to a tournament is a social thing. You see your old friends, you have stories, you listen to news stories from back in the day. Yes, last night, the night before, you know, I was hanging out with Shaba and Sarwan and Christian Zinn talking about the old times. Beautiful, right? Whereas if I go to some open now, it's all these kids and I don't even recognize them. I don't know who they are. I have no one to go to lunch with. You know, it's like, what's going on here? So that's a key thing about this event. And something just to paint a picture of this, both the junior and the senior, that I think is important. And maybe I kind of want to talk about this on a different podcast, but just I want to paint the picture now is like at the senior event, we got a bunch of dudes speaking Russian. Loads of people speaking Russian, okay? And a lot of Jewish dudes, Jewish Eastern Europeans. Then you look down on the other side with both the girls and the junior, and it's almost 100% Asian kids. It's such a different generation. Not just, we're talking about different in styles of play and stuff, but the demographics entirely different. And so we should talk about that on a different podcast. But I want to stress, like, what's happening there socially is like, oh, these are people that I've played against for decades. I understand their life stories. I know like what their foibles are and yada, yada. So there is a connection there that I'm not feeling as an older dude when I go to some other tournament. And so I think whenever we talk about these different things like women's chess, maybe even it's similar. I know they have blind chess and they have all these other, you know, these subcategories that are growing. I think the social component is a huge part of that story.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think the next question the fans will want to know is, what will it take for Jesse to qualify for next year's U.S. Senior Championship?
That's a good question. So I think there's two paths. So first of all, let me just say the bummer. The Senior Open and then the Irwin they were right like at the edges of this tournament. It was planned very poorly in terms of the calendar. So I couldn't really do either of those. And so I can't qualify that way. There's talk of me getting a wild card for next year, but I am not clear on how that process is decided. I'm not even clear that there is going to be a wild card next year. And then at least I did gain a significant amount of points. It hasn't been posted yet, so I don't know how much, but maybe 40 or 50 points And one of my key goals there is just I need to graduate again to the dojo 2400 plus cohort. That would be cool if I could get back to that. But at any rate, if I get above 2400 FIDE again, I'll be in the range of possibly qualifying by rating. It's conceivable that next year Onishuk and Schulman will play, so it's not getting any easier either.
Yeah, I think Onishuk is 48, so you got 2 more years, but Schulman is 49, so he could be there next year.
Yeah.
But as you said, a lot of the players that are eligible don't play. Like Yasser is one.
Right.
And, there are others as well.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? But okay, sounds like rating or very, very potential wild card would be the only way.
Yep.
And do you feel like you have a clear sense of what you would need to do to win? And is your goal still to win this tournament?
Well, first goal now is to get back. I want to, I think one thing is very important to me with the ChessDojo is I don't want to be somebody who is just, like selling something that they're not doing. When I do, say, like a fitness class, I hate it if there's some instructor up there who is not doing the work themselves that they're, saying that other people should do. And so it's important to me to improve, and, there's a variety of reasons I think I fell down the last couple of years. And then a whole interesting quest of being a senior is like, could I at least regain some of my prior level? Right? And what would that take? Honestly, I feel like if I could play some tournaments with 1 round a day, I feel like if I could do that right now, I could get up there, man. I feel like I'm playing pretty well now when I'm slept and yada, yada. But that's going to be its own special challenge. And I really think that what we have going in the dojo training program with the higher cohorts, right, is the material is there for deep calculation work. It helped me a lot while playing. And so I think following the program, more of that, doing the openings like the dojo says to do the openings, doing the sparring as the dojo says, just following the end game that the dojo says. All of these things, if I just follow the program, then I think I'll be where I need to be.
Mm-hmm. That said, it gets harder every year, right?
A little bit. I also, we were talking about Onishuk and Schulman. I don't know, Onishuk's presently living in Odessa, so I don't know whether he's going to come back or anything like that. But one thing that's also just curious to say about it is, we call like the Fisher Boom generation. We can say Benjamin, Christensen, Sarawan. They're, getting older. They're about, 8 to 15 years older than me. But my generation, nobody is playing. We had Alex Scherzer, dude's dead. Vivek Rao, the guy went into finance. Ilya Gurevich, the most talented of my generation, could have been a super GM. Stop playing. So all of these guys that were there, we had Stuart Rachels, Patrick Wolf, all these guys aren't playing. And so besides foreigners, there's nobody from my generation left or even coming up. By the way, I was the first native-born player. There you go, buddy. So I did, in a certain sense, I did get first place.
That is something. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that is something.
Akopian, he's too much of a legend in Armenia, to claim him as a true U.S. senior.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You look at all those guys, and they had the advantage. Who are we talking about? Shabalov, Kaidanov, Novikov, of growing up in a Soviet system that was, I wouldn't have wanted to grow up in Soviet times, but as a chess player, for sure, that was a great time. They had beautiful training, abilities to play against the best in the world, access to a kind of chess culture that is hard for Americans even to fathom. So yeah, they had huge advantages coming up that I certainly didn't have.
Right. Well, it was an awesome tournament to watch. I certainly want to watch it again with you in it.
Well, boss, you got about 10 more years, right? And then you get to play?
I don't know if I will ever get to play, but sure.
Definitely lived up to expectations.
Cool. Yeah.
But I do think that there's room for tournaments over every age group, like in swimming and tennis and stuff. And that could be fun. And I think you made a good point about the social aspect and how that could be helpful, and also the schedule. You know, obviously, if you play in a tournament that's for players over 40 or over 60 or over 70, it's going to kind of cater to players around that age group in terms of the schedule and format and so forth.
Right.
So,
Or guys, you know, the other way to do it would be to just keep the tournaments open, but introduce some age prizes. Because I think they already do have age prizes, like sometimes like best player over 50 or over 65. And that way it's not like an exclusive tournament, because it is kind of weird for me to like exclude kids from chess tournaments. But like, you know, you could have special prizes for the best millennials, the best.
I mean, is it super different than excluding men from an all women's tournament or something? I mean, it's not like all tournaments, right? It's just if there's an occasional tournament that lets a certain group of people, you know, hang out together, have a tournament their style.
Yeah, you know, I mean, occasional is good, but then, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't do much for the rest of the tournaments, right? Like this is the one tournament Jesse can play a year, basically, under under these conditions.
Well, there's other tournaments you just have to go to Europe to play them, basically, right? Like when you're in Portugal coming up, is that gonna be a 1 round a day thing?
True. Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, we were talking about like you know, like having more seniors there and the social aspect and all this. But yeah, for 1 round a day, Europe is definitely where it's at. 100%.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, let's end it there. Here's my trophy. It's heavy. It's heavy, man. You know. Fun times, though. Yeah. Try to be back next year. Yeah. The training begins.
Training begins. Back to it.
All right, cool. Well, we'll snip it there. We'll post it. If you missed it, I guess you could watch it here on the Twitch, but we post this thing in a variety of spots. You can ask Alexa and she'll play it for you, man.
Yeah. Sure. If anyone has any further questions for Jesse about what it felt like to play with all the seniors, or if people have any more controversial opinions about should there or shouldn't there be senior events and which ones.
Goyer asks, will I review my games? Yeah, I'll review them. I'm going to take my time with it because I don't have anything significant coming up. So and they were difficult games, so I'm going to spend time looking at them.
Yeah. Stretch it out.
There was actually, you know, somebody was talking about postmortems, and the kids are not looking at their games after. And a lot of the seniors now are kind of defaulting that. And part of it's just energetically, where you just like at the party the next day, Julio was trying to tell me things that his computer said about our game. And I was like, oh God, please don't tell me that. Please don't tell me, I'm not interested, bro. But I think
you resisted that completely, Jesse. You didn't like after like the game with Novikov, you didn't say, man, I must have been winning, let me just check.
Well, Eugene told me where I was winning, and it was very painful. I was like, oh God, that was so obvious. Why did I miss that? You know? No, I have my method, You know,
Yeah.
I got my method. I'll stick to it. I'll eventually look at with the computer.
Right, but I mean, during the event, you had that discipline. You didn't pursue those emotional answers about the games that as they finished.
No, I did in the morning when I looked at the other person's games. What I did do is interesting is that, you know, I just pulled the games up on Chess.com where they were housed. And of course, Chess.com defaulted to showing the engine. And I was just playing through them rapidly. And so actually the engine there was kind of nice because then I could just, it was empowering to see how many mistakes were being made in these games. So I did use the engine there, but I wasn't, you know, I wasn't doing a deep dive. I was just, you know, scanning these games.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you
Of
feel?
course, Abdul, like, you know, Eugene or Kostya or I, we had opinions about the games that were not based on engines.
Right.
So we weren't like rattling off. I'm sure you didn't rattle off a bunch of engine stuff to Jesse. It's just another, you know, strong player who was watching the game and gives his input. And once you mentioned the Queen H5 thing, I think it's pretty, I don't know, Jesse can draw conclusions pretty quickly about the move.
The bummer with that one too was like the move I played was just so it was like it was hard not to play it because it was positionally so great and probably maybe still winning. But so it was like I was like, well, I thought about Queen H5, but let me just say if A takes B5 hadn't been such a beautiful positional move, I would have spent more time looking at other things, you know?
I won't tell you anything about what I've analyzed about A takes B5. I won't spoil your process.
Okay.
But I also spent, you know, a couple hours looking at that game, so I have thoughts about it. But that makes sense. When you see a really good option, you don't look as hard for better options. If you see an option that you're really dissatisfied with, you may burn a lot of time looking for something to improve on it. Yeah.
But that game was fun because that was all three of us watching it with Eugene, and then Eugene's like a specialist in the Grand Prix stuff. So that was a blast.
Yeah, that was perfect having Eugene for that opening.
Yeah, I should just mention, Eugene Perelstein, friend of the dojo, he came and visited for a couple days just to come hang out, and that was really cool, man. We played pickleball together, man. And actually, the only time we were talking about senior and senior privilege, so we were playing with Ray Ropeson, young, fit, super GM, and sometimes pickleball would be an errant ball, and he would go run after it. He'd look at me and be like, "Baus, you too old. I'm gonna go get this ball for us, okay?" That was my senior double ARP, life advantage going on right there.
That was your first somebody got up and gave you their seat on a bus.
That's right, buddy.
Man, Ray is just good at everything. Just monster at all paddle sports.
Yeah. That's true. He was already good at ping pong as like a 12-year-old or whatever.
Well, cool. What do you guys want to talk about next, Dojo Talks?
I gave you guys a topic in chat that I think would be cool, which is quests. Talking about, setting goals, following quests, chasing them. Yeah. What it does for you, what it does for, tournaments, for the interest in following sports, for the people involved to have quests, for them to state it publicly and all that.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. We can talk about quests. I kind of want to understand what's going on with Jen Shahada and the U.S. chess. Maybe I don't, but if I did understand what was happening, maybe actually, U.S. Open is happening now, so maybe the fallout from all that will be something we can discuss. More drama in the aftermath.
Maybe we can get a lawyer on or someone.
Tell us what's going on.
Break it down. I remember Ben Johnson, he had some lawyers on for like the Hans lawsuit, like breaking down every detail, what this means, what this means. Very, very informative. I enjoyed those episodes a lot.
Yeah, and then I guess this Netflix thing with Hans, people say it's happening. It's hard to imagine, but they say it's happening.
But it's going to be a while, I think. Like that stuff takes time. We're still waiting on like Squid Game season 2. Like, when's that happening? Netflix, that was years ago.
Neiman, actually, I just looking at it now, he's did well recently, and now is up to 27-10.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever going to become world champion or anything, but that guy's on a quest. We could talk about his quest.
He's on a quest.
It's fun to watch quests that'll never succeed. Oh, come on, Kraai. Don't be so mean, boss.
He hit his peak. I mean, he just has to make world champion in some... The problem is he soured his relationship with that Vadim guy, so he'll have a hard time making it to that guy's like world rapid chess team.
So that's the easiest way to win the world championship.
I think all the world championships, yeah, that you can qualify. I think that would be the one. Chess Sharks, hello. Thank you for the raid. Welcome. We were just wrapping up our podcast here on Senior Chess, but you'll be able to find it on YouTube in the days to come. So hello.
Chess Sharks, by the way, I think, at least last year, he was doing the commentary for the Irwin, the other senior. So maybe they're doing that now too. It might be somebody else this year too. Yeah.
Caden, right? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Cool. All right, you guys, let's wrap it up. We'll say goodbye. We'll be back soon.